Lemon Amiga present. A Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to another Lemon Amiga play guide and review. In this week's show, we'll be taking a look at Tubular Worlds, designed by Creative Game Design and released by Dongleware in 1994. We'll be playing the OCS version instead of the AGA version, and apart from a different animation and a few colours around the game, they are virtually the same. So this is a slightly different animation on the OCS version, but you'll find that they are virtually identical in most other respects. Tubular Worlds is a horizontal shoot-'em-up. Unlike most shoot-'em-ups, it comes with a backstory in which we are some kind of last starfighter intent on saving the entire galaxy from an invading horde of aliens. It's our job to fly out there and stop all hellfire from happening before we actually get blown up, and if we do, then unfortunately we do not save the day. Series of the Lemon Play Guides is mostly based on shoot-'em-ups and 3D games, so we've seen a 3D game, now it's time for a shoot-'em-up, and in this game you may be surprised to learn that I've never actually played it before, I've never even heard of this game before, and I've never even seen it before I created this gameplay footage, and I wrote this in 2016. So you are about to see my first and only try of this game, and yes, it does save our high scores into the high score table on the WHD load we're actually using at the moment. And if we leave the titles to roll long enough, it will actually give us some help in the form of describing the power-ups on offer. And here you can see the 5 major power-ups, and that doesn't include the speed power-up, and of course the extra lives as well. So let's just return back to that title screen, and the only other thing we can select is the options from the main menu, and the options are pretty slim in this game. We get to choose the difficulty level, which I like to leave on easy because this game, well, it's the first time I've ever seen it, so let's leave that on easy mode. And because this WHD load is connected up to a 4-way joypad setup, we can have any one of those joypads connected. But I'll be using the zip stick, of course, and let's just leave the music and the sound effects switched on, and let's press fire. Let's check this game out. The first level begins with a canyon, and the first thing I'll mention is the game has somehow cut off information box at the very top of the screen, which contains our lives and our score and all the other information. But for now, let's just ignore that fact because it's the first time I've ever seen this. I didn't actually know that, and let's just see how far we can get. Beginning of the game, we are pretty slow, and missing those power-ups to increase our speed isn't entirely ideal at this stage, and all we can do is try to find the things that we can hit and avoid the things that we cannot hit, and those massive boulders parked in the middle of that screen area cannot be moved over, and if we collide with that side of that rock, well, that will lose some of our energy. The energy, you can see the blue floating droplets floating around our screen, and if we collect those, then that will give us some shield, and if we collect 100 of those, that should give us an extra life. Periodically, we'll also find a power-up, and in this case we've managed to find the green laser, which hopefully manages to cut through all this firepower, and in this game all you have to do is to hold down the fire button and it will give us auto-fire, and it doesn't matter if we have an auto-fire joystick. But this is the first of our barriers, and can we squeeze through this? Well, no, unfortunately not. The big volume firepower will destroy our ship in one hit, and we have 3 lives in this game, so let's continue with our second life back to the start all over again. Things which cannot be hit make a sound effect, and you can hear the ricochet of those missiles bouncing off those ball bearings, and it's crazy to see alien features in this landscape, but you can see the scrolling is smooth and certain features remind me of Hybris in the colours and that kind of thing. And look at that, we've even managed to find a secret cache. Unfortunately, that blocks us off most of the level, and colliding with too many things removes that life, and that means we have to go back to the start again. But before we check out our final life of the 3, let's just return back to that title menu and let's select the 2-player mode. Yes, a few weeks later a friend popped around, and yes, Simon again is going to take the plunge and offer a 2-player mode action in this game, and unfortunately we can't tweak the game in 2-player mode, we can just play it. So let's just give this a try. Action remains smooth in 2-player mode. I am actually the red player and Simon is the blue player, and actually I'm allowing him to collect most of the power-ups, and I'm actually dropping back as a defensive measure, and hopefully we can play as a team and get through the first level of this game. To see all these explosions and all this action going on, and it's great that this smooth scrolling, well, that sometimes takes a bit of a dive in the frame rate department, but that might be because I'm actually trying to rip this at the same time, and that can cause a few lags, unfortunately, as I try to read and write to the same hard drive as I'm actually playing the game from. But you can see that we've managed to get somewhere, at least in this playthrough, and it's funny to see those railway tracks being transformed into barricades that we have to blast our way through, and the sound effects and the smooth music playing together does create some kind of atmosphere in this game, and just like Hybris, as we move through different parts of the same level, we will uncover different types of enemies and different blocks in our way. both of our ships are flashing, and I think that means that we are on our last shield and we are about to die. But the first section is actually split into 3 levels, and once we reach that checkpoint, the screen will go blank, and the next section of that level will load into view. And it's a pity that the game doesn't play like Swiv and play continuously, loading with a track disc loader, which loads all the levels on the fly. But of course, technical wizardry from the sales curve wasn't active in the community, so nobody could actually take advantage of that, and this was basically a public domain effort which was worked on until it looked like it was a commercial release. And yes, it does look like an absolutely commercial release, and it was commercially released by Dongleware, who were a German public domain distributor, and before this they released Oxide, which was a public domain game, and after this they released Arya Viva, which I think that's how you spell it, Arya Viva, and that was actually a public domain shoot 'em up, and that was a very bad effort indeed. Amiga, the second player of the 2-player mode is the only player still alive in this recording, and that player is gathering some items and some side shots and has blasted their way through most of the enemies. And you can see the enemies take it easy on the player on this section, and the screen really opens out and you can't really die unless you collide with any of their firepower, which seems very slow and easy to predict at this stage. See, without a very good forward shooting weapon, that limited side shot can be powered up, but it is no good by the time you get to this stage of the very first level. And don't forget, we haven't even seen the boss yet. If you die, you'll be taken back a number of steps, and we can see that we have cleared this area already, and we have to blast through a number of gates. Some of those are pretty obvious, and you can see some sonic waves waiting to kill us, so we'll have to time our maneuvers around those sonic waves, and the hit detection is spot on, so if we glance to the side, then unfortunately we're going to get damaged, and that means it's going to be life over pretty quickly. Music is very well done, it tends to get a little repetitive after a while, and it's a very slow and small loop, but you can see that the action involved, even on this first level, does require the player to take some dives and some dodges, and take a deep breath sometimes when they are trying to avoid this action with the most limited firepower on offer. Like so many shoot 'em ups that we have seen and we will see in this season, if you die, then you lose all your power-ups, all your speed and all your protection. So if you die at any point, particularly on level 1, you'll find a very difficult time ahead, and as you can see, sometimes you have to get through it unscathed first time, and then you will have the easiest time and you'll be able to breeze straight through these enemies. Unfortunately, my friend is on his last life and it won't be long before he gets killed, and this is basically how far we can manage to get. But he does actually manage to get through this level and on to the next section, avoiding all of this firepower. section of level 1 we find a new enemy which will fire laser batons out, and you have to shoot those in order to get rid of those lasers. And well, you can do that if you have the firepower, and otherwise if you collide with too many things, it's game over. Returning back to my first, last and only try of this game in one player mode, we're still playing the ECS version and we are on our third life. And yes, as you can guess, we can go right back to the start again with virtually no firepower, virtually no speed and virtually no chance of completing this game. So of course I got really far on this last life, and so I will fast forward to the point where we got to on the 2-player mode. You can see, speeding this up, we do have time to get through to those bonuses before we get crushed and killed, and you can see at this speed the scrolling on offer is quite quick and is a reasonable scrolling speed, and even many Amiga games scroll at this speed, so it just shows how much action goes on in a very limited space. Here we are back again on level 2, and let's start blasting through those force fields and make our journey through this game. Anywhere near decent firepower, we can cut through those enemies very easily, and here we are again on the 3rd section of level 1. This is the first time I've seen the 3rd section, and so at least we have the firepower, and it means that hopefully we can destroy a few of these enemies before they even get on target. You can see the enemies firing missiles that leave a nice trail behind, and these graphics even in ECS mode really do look very nice. And the ground and stone effects actually reminds me of ATR, and in ATR by Team 17 we found some very similar canyon effects, and even though these are only drawn in 4 colours, it's still a great effect. And of course the music and the sound effects play it together, which is also a great addition. And we can find different ways to go through these levels. Sometimes we can go below and go the easy way, sometimes we can go above and go the hard way, but it's up to us which direction we take, as long as we don't get stuck behind the rocks and end up scrolling off the screen. Like so many other shooters, sometimes we are prevented from getting access to further areas simply because we picked up the wrong power-up, and in this case it's robbed us of that nice forward firepower, and we have some sidearms which don't do much to protect us in this case. And at the end of this canyon is the end of level boss, and it's a miracle that we've actually got this far on our very last life. You can see some new enemies do appear periodically, just like this worm, and it's always great to see those appearing, and then we return to the familiarity of the standard enemies on this level. Taking on the boss with a glorified pea shooter and a number of slingshots isn't the most ideal way to get rid of it, But you can see the overhead view means that we can tackle that thing and get around it, and having done so, we've managed to pick up a number of shields. A number of shields will then fly around the front of our ship and take on anything which collides with that, and hopefully help protect us. But unfortunately, the little tadpole that we managed to find is not the mother. This is the actual mother of the mothership, and the mother will also spawn little maggots and particles which will try to kill us, and we try to fly around the mother and try to take that down. Like R-Type and all your other favourite horizontal shooters, we'll have to take our time and wait for that screen to scroll around back to the boss head before we can get any shots on target. And if we've destroyed enough of the boss as it goes around, and that's hopefully the last of its claws that we've just got rid of, then the screen will hang around the head and we can take our time to get rid of the boss. And this boss really does take a lot of shots to knock out. You have to aim in its eyes, and the eyes will flash when you manage to get a shot on target, and that's very helpful. Unfortunately, even with this firepower, with this great music, it does take some time to get through this, and to delicately weave your way through this firepower without rushing ahead and rushing into those laser eyes. Also notice that we've picked up some missiles, and tiny blue missiles are actually ejecting from the ship, and that really won't do much at this stage, but those missiles can go over hills and over land, and so you can find that they actually reach the enemies before our firepower, which tends to get absorbed in anything which has any height in this game. Just when you thought it was safe to get out of the water, unfortunately that thing isn't dead and it comes back to attack us, this time with a few tentacles which extend, and those things will obviously kill us on contact, and again we'll have to avoid all the other ships and all the other firepower. And now that we've taken care of its eyes, now we'll have to take care of the creature's brain, which will emit lethal brain waves in our direction, and so we'll have to evade its thoughts as well. When that brain appears, we can shoot it, but it can also shoot us as well. Escaped an Apidia-like pond, now that we head towards deep space with a change of music, and music that sounds a heck of a lot like Cybernoid on the Commodore 64. flying through space, occasionally we'll find ourselves in the guts of a space alien, and of course gutsy space aliens are flying all around space, and once again we'll have to tackle that thing from the inside and take on anything that's floating around in that bloodstream, and eventually we'll hopefully take on enough of these enemies to get through it and make our way out through the rear end. Level 2 seems a lot more user-friendly than level 1, and if you've managed to get through level 1, then level 2 may seem like a breeze. The enemy firepower moves at the speed of a very slow motion thing indeed, and it's very easy to get around that, and the only annoying thing is when you hit something solid and that annoying sound effect plays over and over again, but you cannot release that fire button just in case there is an enemy just off that screen, and you have to take those on pretty quickly, otherwise they will try to take us down with their own firepower. So you have to do that, and you have to bear those sound effects. And here we are onto another section. This is the second section of level 2, and it looks pretty much like all the other shooters that you've ever seen, and then it transforms again into another type of alien, and we'll have to weave in between a different type of canyon this time and avoid all these spiders. I think you will agree that the graphics on offer are great, and this is just the OCS ECS version that we're playing at the moment, and I could actually be playing the AGA version that came out exactly at the same time, but these graphics are so well drawn that you'll hardly notice any difference between the two. I often get criticised for showing the games as good as they can be with the very fast CPUs, and so this time I decided to use the basic ECS format and show you how worse the game can be, so that when you play the AGA it will look even better. Stage with blue floating things floating around and missiles floating around and our firepower and the enemy's firepower, sometimes it can become a job trying to find what you're actually supposed to hit and what you're supposed to miss, and so it's part of this game that you have to select these things, and if you fly into the wrong thing, of course, then it's game over, especially because we're on our last life still and we haven't picked one up yet. Tubular Worlds was originally created on the IBM PC machine and later converted to the Apple Macintosh and also converted to the Commodore Amiga. All of those were released in 1994. The game was originally programmed on the PC by Andreas Scholl, who began his career with Catchem, the game that we've seen already on the Amiga, the monkey platform game Catchem in 1992, and then he moved on to the PD classic Mine Runner on the Amiga in 1992. Then he moved on to games such as Wild West Tycoon for Windows in 2002. The Amiga coding and the conversion was all done by Matthias Bock, And Matthias Bock also began with Mine Runner, the PD game that we have played last year in the Lemon vs EAB International Games competition. That Mine Runner was definitely a Matthias Bock, Andre Scholl production. After that, Matthias moved on to Poweroids, which is an overhead asteroids game, and he also created Star Defender on the Amiga, which is a type of very deluxe Galaga-like version of Defender, which is very good indeed. He then moved on to Monsters of Terror on the Amiga, which is a Pac-Man game in which you shoot everybody with guns. And Monsters of Terror also has some really great speech effects as well. All of these games are available for you to download on your Amiga now from lazycow.de. If you type lazycow.de, it will find all of Matthias Bock's games, including his recent games, the Tiger Claw game, which came out for the Amiga and the Commodore 64 very recently, which is a Bruce Lee clone, a Bruce Lee update called Tiger Claw, and he also created Power Glove in 2013 for the Commodore 64 and the PC, which is a cave shooter. And very recently, Matthias Bock released Nano Void, and Nano Void is an overhead shooter very much like this game, only it's a 3D game where you can multi-scroll all around the galaxy. And so check out Nano Void on your PC right now. After that, and I think these music and sound effects are a little corrupted here, but after that hopefully we'll find the second level boss, and the second level boss is another huge brain in space with feelers that have to be destroyed, and again you have to hit the central core of that brain. After the fantastically huge Mr. Toad boss of the first level, this boss is very easy, and with these sidearms it means we can stay out of its way and just shoot and take our time to finish it off. Like the first boss, this will take some time to do, and it can get pretty boring sometimes when you're waiting for this game to finish, but it doesn't take as long as the first boss, and hopefully we can simply avoid it as it moves off the screen. Then we can now move on to the third level of this game. To save us those crash sound effects and that music, I'll just talk straight through it. And maybe the game has crashed at this point because I've clearly defeated the enemy and the enemy is not on the screen anymore. But that isn't the only enemy at the end of level 2, of course. No, the game could not be so easy, and taking a lot of cues from R-Type, the final boss at the end of level 2 is something pinned against the wall, and we'll have to shoot it from against the wall and avoid all this firepower yet again. We are getting hit, I think, but luckily our shields are holding out, hopefully having collected a lot of those blue things floating around like water droplets, or maybe the shields in front of our craft are soaking those up. Either way, finally we've managed to demolish the second level boss, and that puts us on to the third level in this game, Tubular Worlds. The music changes again and the landscape changes again, and we even get a different colour scheme as well, incorporating green and blue. The graphics were created by Sebastian Dosch, and Sebastian also created the graphics for Rock and Roll, the game which appeared in 1989 on the Amiga, and the football manager game known as The Manager, which appeared on the Amiga in 1992. Silky smooth music you can hear was created by Darius Zenda on the Amiga, and he also created the music to Catechis on the Amiga, and he also created the in-game music for R-Type, and don't forget Chris Hulsbeck created the title music on the Amiga. But yes, Darius Zenda created the music for this game, and I think he created great music which is really fitting to the job. Some point around here, or maybe later, on level 3, I actually gain another life by collecting 100 of those floating blue crystals you can see. And if we place over the screen the actual info bar, you can see we are supposed to have a score which rises. Next to that are our lives, of which we have 1. Next to that is the blue water droplets, and I think those go down when we get hit and act like a shield. But I do know for a fact that when we gain 100 of those, then we'll gain an extra life, and the number next to that is actually the number of spinning orbs that we've got around the front of our ship, of which we have 2 at the moment. Having never played this game before and never seen this game before, I think this is a really enjoyable experience on the Amiga. I'm never a shoot 'em up fan, but I managed to get all this way from level 1 all the way up to level 3, and I think there are 6 levels in this game in total, at least 5 or 6. And don't forget, we're actually playing this on the easy mode. There is a medium and a hard mode as well, so if you like a hectic shoot 'em up challenge with actually lots going on the screen, then perhaps this is the game for you. It's smooth, it's fast, and there is certainly a lot going on, and by the time you get to this stage, again, deciphering the bullets and the firepower isn't always easy, but at least you can't say this game isn't colourful enough, isn't smooth enough, and doesn't have some great firepower along the way. It's up to us what we pick up, and if we pick up the wrong thing, then it's our fault, and if you repeat plays, it should mean that we get through this game no problem. It should take maybe an hour to get through the game end to end, and as you can see, it's not very hard, and it's certainly very playable, and more playable than quite some shooters that I've actually played on the Commodore 64, where I didn't get anywhere near this far. Parts of this game remind me of Hybris and Battle Squadron and Swiv and all the great games that we found on the Amiga, and even though this came out in 1994, I'd never actually heard the name before. I have heard of Spherical Worlds from the top 15 games that you've never even heard about, but Spherical Worlds is definitely not this game, and it's not Forgotten Worlds either. This is definitely Tubular Worlds, and finally we get to something which looks a little bit like a tube. Means we've just taken a hit from something, but we are still alive in the game, so let's move on to those scores. Unfortunately, all the big name magazines didn't even look at this game, and that is apart from Amiga Joker, of course, who managed to award this game 64%. A typical Amiga Joker score. Amiga Dream reviewed this game and gave it 74% in October of 1994, and lastly the Lemon Amiga score currently for the OCS version, which we are playing at the moment, is 76%, which isn't bad and gives this game an average score of 7 out of 10. Tubular Worlds is good for beginners, and after they get over that steep learning curve, this game is actually very fair and the average player will get far in this game. And yes, this is still the very first and last try in single player mode, and I've managed to get this far on just the one life. I haven't got much of an idea of how many lives we have at the moment, but I think we've managed to pick up one extra life, and as we are about to die and respawn just the once, I think that's the one extra life that we have. And again, those volcanoes reminding me of Battle Squadron and all those great games that we used to play on the Amiga. Tubular Worlds is smooth, the music is good, the sound effects are a little corrupted on this recording, but I think that they play fine on the normal game, and it's certainly a great feeling of reward to get far in this game, having been under constant action all the way, and it's more fun to play this than to watch it in this review. At the moment we have made it onto the 3rd level boss, and it's one of those bosses where we have to navigate all the way around it and take that out in sections, and we'll be given a number of bonuses along the way. You have to make sure that I have to knock out all those sections of the boss and don't get stopped by anything, including the spikes, and we can take diversions and different methods around this thing, but if we take the wrong method and get stuck behind that scenery, then that's life over. Icon you can see off the screen is an armor. That's actually the 3-way power up, and we have the 5-way at the moment, so let's just try to keep hold of that. And we cannot fire backwards in this game, so we'll just have to rely on the screen scrolling to scroll us around the boss, just like the boss on the 2nd level of Apidia, a huge pike boss, only this time we'll have to make sure that we get around all of these tight corners. Whenever we lose a life, of course, we'll lose all those power-ups and all that speed, and it will mean that we are virtually defenseless in the game. And if you are not used to these levels, then sometimes you may wander blindly into a dead end and get killed. So that's the extra life that we managed to pick up somewhere in this game, used up, and that means it's game over. All we can do now is to enter our name onto that obligatory shoot 'em up high score table and find out how far we got in this game. And it even gives us an idea of the level we reached as well. And it's a nice demo-like effect, and we can enter our name on the keyboard, and after that we'll take a look at those high scores, which shows my high score that you saw at the beginning of this review, and E3 means level 3. So thank you once again for viewing another Playguide and review. Please check us out, please subscribe, please donate, and hope to see you again at another Playguide sometime soon. Thank you.